So I really want to compel people, the new formulation that protects you against the latest variants of COVID, go get the opportunity to get that shot. It's so important, not just for an individual, but also to make sure that we don't wind up in a situation where our hospitals get overwhelmed. So let's take that action collectively, and I really hope that this can be an area where we can all agree, both to be grateful for the incredible science that brought us these vaccines, but also come together and say they're remarkably safe. We've seen hundreds of millions of doses around the world, and we've seen the positive impact that has. So I hope everybody gets their shot.
Health Canada continues to filibuster and seems generally unable to ascertain the risk versus benefit calculation used to justify the expedited novel COVID-19 mRNA injections on children after nearly 3 years of being repeatedly asked that very basic question. Tamara Ugolini here with Rebel News to provide an update on the safe and effective injections that Canadian health overlords have promoted since their authorization in December of 2020. See, initially the injections were authorized under an interim order to expedite the novel and still in clinical trial shots into the arms of anyone aged 18 and up. But by the end of May 2021, Health Canada was authorizing the Pfizer jab specifically for children and youth aged 17 and under. This prompted principal physicians like emergency room doctor Jean-Marc Benoit to ask what the risk versus benefit calculation was for this decision. It's a valid question, especially as Pfizer was claiming that their shot, quote, demonstrated 100% efficacy and robust antibody response, end quote. It's a claim that the purported to be flagship broadcasts like the CBC National parroted unquestionably.
They might not get as sick as adults, but children are getting infected and spreading this virus. They also make up roughly 20% of Canada's population.
I think it's almost impossible to reach herd immunity without vaccinating children.
That's one reason why Pfizer's latest trial is key. The data isn't peer-reviewed yet, but in a press release, Pfizer announced its COVID-19 vaccine is safe and demonstrated 100% efficacy in preventing the disease in teens aged 12 to 15.
CNN, ABC, CBS, CNBC followed their pharma masters' marching orders by falsely and unquestionably headlining the same. But Dr. Benoit explains that this claim only means that the injections produced antibody production in blood work 7 days post-injection and did not demonstrate the prevention of infection or death.
They looked at antibodies. They looked at antibodies in the people who got a placebo injection, and they looked at antibodies in people who got a Pfizer injection, and they found that the antibody production in the people who got the Pfizer injection was high in all of the cases of the people who had received the product, and that it was not in all of the people who had received the saltwater injection. So that's not standard. In the adult studies, what they did was they looked at people who not only got COVID, but how severe the COVID they got was. So because I don't think many parents would be interested in getting a medication where they say, well, it's going to change the results of your blood tests. We don't really know if it's going to protect your child from getting COVID, and we don't really know if it's going to protect your child from dying. So what we have is it is 100% effective in changing the results of a blood test. And we think that that relates to its efficacy in terms of preventing death.
At that time, Dr. Benoit was asking the Biologic and Radiopharmaceutical Drugs Directorate Division of Health Canada for the data and the risk versus benefit calculation that confirms the safety of the recently authorized injection.
So the information is there. So I want to know, what is the risk of dying from COVID for kids? 1. 2, what is the risk associated with the vaccine for kids? Now, that information breaks down into 2. So there's short-term risk, which is what's the risk of dying as a result of some complication associated with the vaccine. And then it breaks into long-term risk. And long-term risk, we just don't know, because long-term risk is something that it takes time to gather that data.
And the response he received was shocking.
Health Canada's review of COVID-19 vaccines and therapeutic products is based on qualitative risk-benefit calculation. It would not be sufficiently accurate to quantitatively calculate risk based on our limited understanding of the virus and the disease.
Except that at that time, by June 2021, they had nearly 18 months of data showing the flu was statistically more risky than COVID-19 for this demographic. And if the understanding of the virus was so limited, then why was it necessary to expedite modified RNA injections riddled with DNA fragments and other contaminants through to children? Apparently, because parents wanted it.
The email goes on to say that, quote, the National Advisory Committee on Immunization, that's NACI, reviewed available evidence on the burden of illness in this population and vaccine acceptability of parents and guardians.
Basically, these were emotional support injections for successfully fear-mongered, propagandized parents and adults. To be expected, I suppose, when this is the kind of misleading information parents were receiving by CTV News and President of the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, Alex Munter.
We're seeing the CHEO website here. There's lots of links there in partnership with Sick Kids as well. I noticed that the Premier was here a couple of days ago saying he understands why some parents are hesitant about young children. I'm not suggesting that you're conflicting with the Premier, but you do seem to be going the other way, that we really should not be hesitant at all, given what we know about these vaccines right now.
Really, my only message to parents is to make an informed choice, and making an informed choice means having access to accurate information. And I think that a lot of the really aggressive and false misinformation about vaccination that's been out there for the last few months is going to ramp up, and that will also put an onus on the news media to be very careful and judicious and accurate in its reporting, because parents are listening and parents are making decisions.
So I wanted to be sure that we were interpreting Health Canada's response correctly, and through your generosity and support at rebelinvestigates.com, I was able to file an access to information request, an ATIP, asking for copies of communications and notes about any risk analysis done regarding the approval of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine for children aged 12 to 17. We went back and forth on this ask for months, and Health Canada tried to bury me with 254,188 pages of documents before I simply responded that I wanted the quantitative risk-benefit calculation that justifies the injection authorization in youth. That's it. I even told them what that should look like, but Health Canada took a 365-day extension to this basic ask in September of 2021, and it has been crickets ever since. I've reached out to the agency's media contacts several times since then, all to no avail. In July of 2022, I asked them for the quantitative risk benefit used to justify the authorization at that time, which was Pfizer's shot in children aged 5 to 11 and still those aged 12 to 17. I asked this again in October of 2023. If the claim that the shots are safe and effective was based on sound science and not a marketing scheme propaganda, then I think that this question would have been easily answered years ago. For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini. Canada's Health Minister Mark Holland continues to tout the safety and efficacy of these shots, despite real-world data and mounting concerns about the risk profile and the contaminants. If you would like to send a message to Minister Holland calling on him to revoke market authorization for this unstable product, then you can do so at nomoreshots.ca. At that website, you can also find all of our previous reports on the subject to become the most reliably informed. And if you would like to support this kind of journalism, then please do so at nomoreshots.ca.